Man, Bela Lugosi was a busy little bee in this block, because he's in everything. Let's take a look. Our first of this block of Lugosi's best hits is Black Dragons. Basically, it's a war flick with spies and intrigue. Basically, this guy, played by Lugosi, meets up with these businessmen who are making plans after the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. And he captures one, keeping him secluded, to give orders from the shadows, while he kills several others and places a quote-unquote Japanese dagger in their hands and leaves them on the now closed Japanese embassy steps. See, they're in Washington, and that's where the embassy is. Anyway, eventually, it's revealed by the now disfigured one guy, after he's managed to get liberated, when one of the guys Lugosi is supposed to kill puts up a fight and shoots him. So he basically gives a final confession, which corroborates the disfigured guy's story. And the rest of the movie is told in flashback. Turns out, Lugosi's character is a German doctor, and during World War II, you know how awesome German doctors are. Holds up sarcasm sign. He goes to this Japanese delegate, possibly someone close to the emperor, but not the emperor, and he proposes a plan. Surgically alter several members of this secret Japanese society called the Black Dragons, roll credits, and have them take the place of some dead businessmen to spy on the Americans and nudge the war subtly in the Japanese favor. But after the good doctor alters the men, they declare him a liability. So basically it's a double cross. Big mistake. They lock him in a cell with a prisoner who is set to be released, who happens to also look like Lugosi, and is obviously played by him too. So the doctor switches places with the poor guy. Not sure what happens to him, probably dies. But he decided that even though it would hamper the efforts in Japan, and therefore in Germany, he had to get his revenge. And he did, and happily dies. And you know the rest. America wins the war, and Japan changes. Some would say for the better, some would say for the worse. Our next in Lugosi's greatest hits is Invisible Ghost. Lugosi plays an aristocrat who lost his wife to first infidelity and then a car crash. So, on her anniversary, he has dinner with her, even though she's not really there. She basically is a ghost to him. And the staff, consisting of a black fella and a young white lady, a maid. The black fella is the butler. They've gotten pretty used to the eccentricities of the aristocrat. But none of them know that the wife is actually alive. The car crash prematurely aged her and left her semi-catatonic. And she's been kept alive in an underground crypt, comfortable, by the gardener that tends to the grounds. Unfortunately, he doesn't know that she's been having little constitutionals, and when she goes to the window and locks eyes with her husband, saying that he would kill her, he would kill anyone, she accidentally hypnotizes him into going into a sleepwalking state and using his coat to kill first the maid, then attempting to kill the gardener, but he survives barely and is unable, but unfortunately is unable to say who the attacker was because his throat was damaged, and eventually tries to kill someone else, possibly a doctor who's come to visit him. Meanwhile, some detectives are snooping around trying to figure out what's going on. And unfortunately, there are some non-murder casualties. This one guy, who is said to be married to the daughter of the aristocrat, he gets framed and sent to the executioner's block like that. I've never seen a more rapid turnover since the De Niro version of Frankenstein when they hung the one maid. Anyway, the next almost casualty is the butler, because there was fibers from Lugosi's coat that were on a ripped up picture of the wife. And the coat was found in the butler's room. So he's almost next. But thankfully, the twin brother of the now dead fiancée is on the case as well. So while everyone's investigating and the daughter and the twin brother are buddying up together, the wife breaks out of her incarceration with the gardener indisposed and starts stealing food. And the new cook, a more motherly figure, notices. And eventually the wife is caught, and some of what she incoherently mumbles clues the detectives in, who reveal her to Lugosi's character, who suddenly goes into a rampage. Luckily, they're able to subdue him long enough for the hypnosis to wear off. Unfortunately, the stress of the situation is too much for the old lady's heart, and she dies. And Lugosi, resigned to his fate, allows himself to be taken into custody. The end. Next is a murder mystery comedy called One Body Too Many. It's about this eccentric who wants to be buried in a glass dome on the roof of his house, where he can look up at the stars through a window in his coffin, well, casket, and his will is not going to be read until that happens. So he invites all his unscrupulous relatives to stay in the house until he's buried, but there are stipulations. If they leave before he's interred, they forfeit their share of the will. And if anyone tries to bury him underground, the inheritance is reversed. The smallest amount being $1.50, the largest amount being 500,000, which back in the day was not chump change. Truth be told, while I could probably burn through 500,000 like that, it would still carry me a long way. But I digress. So, the unscrupulous characters, except for this one niece who's halfway decent, are all conspiring against one another. Meanwhile, the detective they've hired to keep the dead guy where he is until it's time to put him in the dome, he gets taken out of the picture temporarily, and an insurance salesman who had scheduled a meeting with the old guy a few days ago finally gets to where he needs to be, only for everyone to think that he's the detective, except he's kind of a coward, so he wants to get the duck out of Fudge. Only he's sort of fallen for the halfway decent niece, and so he decides to stay. And he gets roped into various hijinks involving various unscrupulous characters, almost drowning in the old guy's coffin at one point, and discovering the old guy sequestered in the telescope that's in the observatory on the roof of the guy's house. And eventually, people start dying. Now, Lugosi is kind of a red herring in this one. He plays the butler, and he says to the maid that we need to spread some poison around because there are too many rats in the house. And the implication is that he poisoned this coffee that he tries to get everyone to drink throughout the picture. And the only one who is sort of interested is the insurance salesman, only he prefers drip over percolate, and that coffee's percolate. So Lugosi's part of a running gag about the coffee, which turns out to be false anyway. It's just really good coffee, because he and the maid partake in it at the very end of the film. And eventually, it's revealed that this one guy, Henry, which I think was the lawyer, or possibly one of the cousins, he had, as it turns out, had taken a peek at the will and noticed he was going to get the smallest share. So he had planned to just bump everyone off so he could get the mother lode. Only when he tries to throw the decent cousin off the roof, the insurance salesman, emboldened by the fact that he has backup, which ends up getting dropped into the kitchen halfway to the chase, he corners the guy, who's got a gun, by the way, on the observatory, and nearly gets shot, were it not for a convenient activation of the rotator for the observatory, which knocks him off the roof to his demise and saves the salesman and the cousin. And we never do get to find out what was in the will. Personally, I thought that the cousin would get the 500,000 while the money spent on the observatory would eat up the rest of the savings, or all the savings, so nobody got anything. But that didn't happen. Though I do think the cousin and the salesman lived happily ever after. And finally, we come to Lugosi's creepiest role since Dracula, White Zombie. Basically, it's about this couple who get taken to Haiti to get married thanks to a friend named Beaumont. Only Beaumont has designs on the fiancée, the female fiancée. So he's basically decided to employ Lugosi's character, a sort of witch doctor who has already enslaved his enemies on the island, including his teacher, the one who taught him voodoo, to try and put the future wife, under his spell, so that Beaumont can have her. In fact, the evil in his eyes permeates the whole film. We see close-ups of his eyes, even when they're not attached to his head. A very good camera effect, by the way. Meanwhile, the locals have taken to burying... Sorry, excuse me. Have taken to burying man, these camera tricks. Okay. Have taken to burying their dead on the road. In fact, the carriage that takes the couple to the castle where the marriage is to be performed, where the marriage is to be performed, can't talk tonight, they end up going right over a grave and witnessing a ritual. And they even have to hurry up to the castle because Lugosi's character waylays them with his zombie army and swipes the fiancé's scarf. Later, he uses that after she's been exposed to the zombie powder during the ceremony, the wedding ceremony, and creates a wax figure and sets that on fire and turns her into a waking corpse. Some time passes. He and Beaumont and the zombies steal her body from the crypt where she's interred and finish the ritual to turn her into the titular white zombie. And meanwhile, the guy fiancé, he's developed a wee bit of a drinking problem to the point where he keeps hallucinating he sees her. Eventually, the minister who tried to marry them and who's always asking for a light for his pipe, it's a running gag actually, and who also has friends on the island because they think he's a bit of a magician even though he's just a minister, he gets clued into what might be going on at the castle on top of the hill. And so he and the drunkard set off to try and confront Beaumont and his silent partner. Meanwhile, the silent partner is unsatisfied with the fact that his new girlfriend is a soulless husk. And while it's not really necrophilia, it's still kind of skeevy. He was a creep way before he revealed his true intentions, trying to get her to run away with him even when she was walking down the aisle. And seriously, creep. I mean, what does she look like? Julia Roberts? She's not going to be a runaway bride. Anywho, he has a change of heart and asks Lugosi to undo the voodoo that he do best. Only he's got his own plans, so he slips a bit of the zombie powder into the guy's drink, which slowly paralyzes him. But before he can perform the ritual the rest of the way, the drunkard stumbles in, finds his fiancée, and that starts to snap her out of her trance. So, the witch doctor, Lugosi, he uses a hand gesture where he forms his hands into a sort of yin-yang symbol, which signifies the grip on the soul of the victim, and tries to get the lady fiancé to kill her guy. Luckily, the minister followed them to the castle and stops her long enough for the guy fiancé to wake up and try to stop Lugosi's character. Only he's just got naughty words, and Lugosi's got an army of zombies who are immune to bullets. So, after exhausting his ammunition, apparently he did bring a gun, he's nearly knocked off a cliff by the zombies. Luckily, the minister tells him to duck at the right moment, and the zombies all walk off the cliff. But what's to stop them from just getting right back up? So, Lugosi decides to dirty his own hands by throwing him off the cliff. Just like he had his zombies throw Beaumont's butler into a whirlpool. Only the half-paralyzed Beaumont manages to stumble into the scene and push both himself and Lugosi off the cliff, which breaks the curse and restores the girlfriend back to herself. And before the hero and his girlfriend can kiss, the minister asks for another light. And that is the end of this block of horror classics. When we return, it'll be giant monsters, screaming skulls, and more zombies. Stay tuned.